Today, I'm really excited to have Zach and Jody Gray here with me from Nashville, Tennessee. Zach and Jody are a husband and wife wedding photography team who love people and are equally passionate about marriage and the photography business. Well known to many in the industry, Zach and Jody have been featured in People magazine, Photo Vision, Professional Photographer magazine, and a host of other places. As well as working hard to give wedding couples the photography they've always dreamed of, Zach and Jody help photographers grow their own businesses with free marketing and photography tips. So hi, Zach and Jody. What a privilege it is to have you on the show, and I'm really excited to hear all about your photography adventures.
Hi.
Hey, Nigel.
Thanks so much for having us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is fantastic. I've been wanting to get you guys on here for so long, and today's topic is, as we probably guessed it, is wedding photography. So let's dive right in.
Sweet.
Sounds good.
So what was the initial inspiration for you guys that got you both started in the professional photography business, and how did you settle on wedding photography as your main specialty?
Ooh, that is a good question. I would say the short of the long of it is desperation. I needed a job. I was a musician before I was a photographer, and I was a very in my opinion, a good musician, but in most people's opinion, not a very successful musician. And I was broke and poor when we got married, and I needed something to do that was creative, and photography became that thing.
And I always loved photography growing up. So when Zach was like, hey, let's start a photography business, I was like, sure, why not? I've always loved shooting. And then we kind of settled on wedding photography as our main specialty. I never remember making a very definitive decision of this is what we're going to do. But the people that we had surrounded ourselves with, like our Sunday school class, we were in a newlywed Sunday school class. So everyone in there was getting married. And so it was kind of just a natural thing that we fell into.
Yeah, that was what was on our minds because we were just married. So we thought, wedding photography, what could be better? And there's probably money in that, right?
Yeah, that's what everyone says. Oh, do wedding photography. That's where the cash is. That's also where the hard work and the stress and the frustration is also.
Yes.
Yeah, you get started out and then you realize the exact opposite is so many times true.
Indeed. And so your dreams to be the next American Idol didn't quite come to fruition. And so you felt on your backup plan, let's do photography instead.
Exactly. And a big part of that too was, I didn't have a lot of skills growing up. I, believe it or not, only went to 3 weeks to the third grade as the farthest I ever went to school. And I never really believed in myself that I could really do anything successful, especially making money. I didn't really understand business or any of those things. But when I came home this one day, looking for a job, and I said, hey, honey, what do you think about becoming wedding photographers? And she was like, yes, I believe that you could do that. That was huge for me to have somebody that believed in me, that thought I could accomplish something. And we've been preaching that ever since, that it's really, really important to have mentors in your life and people surrounding you that believe in you, that can help you change the way you think.
Oh, I totally agree. I was talking on a podcast episode the other day, actually, with Dr. Stan Beecham, and he's a sports psychologist by profession, but a lot of what he teaches has very much applications in the business world. And in fact, he teaches business leaders all about how their psychology affects their business and that kind of thing. And that's one of the key parts of what he talks about is this belief in yourself. And it goes a little bit deeper than that. It's like when it comes to success, we have to expect to be successful, not just hope to be successful. And there's a very big difference in that. So having that belief in yourselves really got you going and got you started, right?
It did. It got us started. It got me started in the beginning. I was able to work a little more because I had sort of a early morning job at the time, and my wife was working full-time for a record company. So I was kind of really diving into the business, but just because she believed in me didn't mean that we were able to build a successful business right from the start. And that happened when we focused on the business side versus just the shooting side.
It's interesting that you said you came home one day and you said, honey, how about becoming wedding photographers? Because I noticed that you didn't come home and say, maybe we should just become professional photographers and we can photograph kids and cats and dogs and horses and weddings and seniors and families and commercial and everything else that's going out there, and maybe some fine art as well thrown in. You decided to specialize from the beginning, which is fantastic. Yeah. Is that something that you feel is important for photographers to do, to specialize in one genre from the get-go?
Absolutely. I think it's first important to figure out what you want to shoot. And oftentimes that decision's made by, what you had mentioned earlier, photographers think that they can make a lot of money in a certain genre, so they pick that. But I think the biggest driving decision, yes, of course, doesn't need to be finances, but it needs to be, what are you passionate about? Because if you hate shooting weddings, even if you're making a buttload of money, you are not going to be happy. And you probably won't make a lot of money at it because you're not happy with it and you're not excited about it. So for us, it's definitely, I think it's important for any photographer to maybe shoot a little bit of this and that here and there. But man, once you know exactly what you're excited about and you're passionate about, pursue that 100% because you only have so much time. And, we say that if you're going to be a senior photographer and shoot high school seniors, the marketing is different. Where you're finding those clients is completely different from weddings. And so you're dividing your time and you're not going to succeed as fast as you would if you're not specialized.
I would definitely concur with my wife that once you figure out the passion side, what you're excited about, there's always a way to make money. There's a way to figure out how to do that. Now, I'm not saying do what you love and the money will follow, because that is definitely not true at all. You have to do what you love, but then you have to figure out where the money is. You have to figure out how to make money doing that. But I also think it's really, really critical that you do specialize, because in our opinion, if you're a wedding photographer and a senior photographer and a portrait photographer of some kind, those are all completely different businesses. It's kind of like running a pizza shop and running a Subway shop. They're running two completely different businesses and trying to merge them into one. And it's just a lot harder to get momentum going in the beginning when you do that.
I think, too, having a real passion for what it is that you're working in enables you to stay in the game longer when things get tough.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I don't know about you, but I don't think that becoming a professional photographer is an easy path for anybody.
No,
it's interesting that there is a perception out there because of the change in the last 10 to 15 years of the ease of digital and how accessible it's become, that it seems, yeah, this is just an easy thing. I buy myself a Mac computer and I get myself a nice camera with a nice lens, and all of a sudden I have a business and I'll just be making money every weekend, and all my clients will be laughing and smiling all day, and I'll just have all this money. I'll go on vacations and I won't really work very much. Ha ha ha.
It sounds attractive.
Yeah, any working full-time photographer is laughing, as they're listening to this, going, that is completely not true. And it's not. It's more difficult to run wedding or portrait or any kind of photography business than it is to go get a job somewhere else, or even to work in a more of a highly skilled area, because you are figuring out not only how to work in the skill, but also how to be an entrepreneur and a manager and all the things that normal people that work at regular jobs don't necessarily do.
Do you remember those cartoons where you see one of the characters being chased in the desert somewhere and they're just running, and all of a sudden they run up a cliff?
Yeah.
They're in the middle of the air and their legs are spinning, and it's a little while before they realize that there's nothing holding them up, and they go down. I think in a lot of ways some photographers are a bit like that. They jump in, they think it's going to be easy, and they run helter-skelter straight into it. They keep on going, the difficulties start happening, but then they keep going on that initial kind of optimism and the hope that it's going to work, and then all of a sudden they're like, this isn't working.
That's very true.
It's a lot of work.
So let's talk about branding for a second, because you guys have quite a distinctive brand for your photography and your business. And what are the most important factors to you in the way that you branded yourselves?
I think it was really important for us to really make sure that who we were stood out in our brand. And we worked with Melissa Love over there from the UK, and she does a phenomenal job capturing who you are and then putting that out in a visual brand. And so we knew that we wanted to capture who we were as people, what we loved, what we were about, our love, our marriage. We love coffee. That's incorporated in our brand. And so I think that's the biggest factor that we really focused on, was who we were and trying to communicate that through our brand.
And we strongly believe when you're starting out, if there's one place to really focus and spend marketing dollars, it's on the perception of your brand. There's a business writer named Jack Trout, who wrote a book called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. And in that book, he says, perception is not reality. It's the only reality. And what he means by that is, whatever a client believes about you, whether it's true or not, that's what they believe, and that's the truth to them. So we need to, one, of course, put the reality of who we are out there. But when we do that, we need to have that be phenomenal. We need people to see the window of our storefront, of our website, of our blog, or our business card, or marketing materials, anything we hand to somebody, and have that scream, I'm professional, I'm going to take care of you, I have my act together, and I know what I'm doing. And that helps to build trust into the brand. And that's something we focused on very early on. And I think that really helped us gain a ton of momentum in our first year.
So it's not just a case of picking some nice colors and having a little logo.
No.
Yeah, I love what Melissa Love, who did our branding, she calls it brand identity versus, just having a logo and a couple of nice colors. You're really identifying the business. And when people come there, how do they identify you and what do they see? And a brand is a lot more than just the logo and some colors. It's the way that you feel when you look at a brand. You don't think of Apple and go, man, they have a really great symbol that represents the brand, and that's why they're awesome. Mm-hmm. When you think about Apple, you think about beautiful software and hardware working together. You think about very cool and interactive and very modern pieces of gear that just work really well. That's what you think about when you start thinking about Apple. You don't think about a logo and a couple of colors on the website.
A brand is also something very important to your business in the sense that it needs to be protected from being diluted, which is, I think, another reason to stay specialized in many ways. I think, we can branch out, but when I was talking with Tim Walden the other week, he was talking about how the different things that they do have distinctly different brands under that umbrella of the main brand. So, are you ever tempted to go into other things and do other types of work, and then you would have to brand yourself differently for those?
Jody and I have really, over the years, had many different brands. One of them, of course, was our wedding brand that we really put our time and energy to for 6 or 7 years straight. But that also is our photographer brand, and we're known by a lot of photographers as educators, and we really focused on what that brand was and what that brand meant to help other photographers get to where they wanted to go. So you definitely can do that, and you can branch out, but I think it's very important to first establish the first brand, have that brand working, allow that brand to scale and to have you be less involved in it so it starts to work on its own. And then if you want to, you can start working in other genres, but realizing it's going to be in multiple businesses.
Yeah, we've never really been like, yes, let's go into dog photography too. Like if I was passionate about all types of photography, then I would definitely put high school seniors, because I think they can be your biggest marketing tool, and I think that could be really fun to do, but I have no desire to do that. So no, we're pretty happy with where we are.
To do the work.
Now, one of the great things about you two is that, you're a husband-wife team, and wedding photography is more often than not a team effort regardless. Even if you're a solo photographer, you have assistants and such like. But you guys have what you might call the perfect team, working together as husband and wife in the business. What would you say are the main advantages to being able to do that?
Well, first off, I would say, whether you're a female who shoots by herself or a guy who shoots by himself or a couple, I think we know a ton of photographers in all genres that are highly, highly successful. So you don't have to be a husband and wife team to have an advantage. But I think there are advantages that you can play to if you are a husband and wife team. And some of the ones that we really worked on was that perception, again, that you feel like you're getting two for the price of one in a sense. So even though our prices were always quite a bit higher than the average photographer, brides felt like they were already getting two of us. And the reality is that if you look at the industry, if you look at some of the statistics, that women are dominating, especially the wedding photography industry. I think it's like 70-30 or 65-35 or somewhere in that range of women dominating. And that's because weddings are emotionally driven, and women, I think, can cater to that much more easily. So that was something that Jody and I played to a lot, which was, hey, my wife is going to be with the ladies when they're getting ready and blah, and it's going to be more comfortable. And it's about the way they feel. And they love that. They were really attracted to that. And then I'm hanging out with the guys and we're acting cool. And the guys are like, yes, that's cool. And they're going to smoke cigars or do whatever guys do before the wedding. And they felt like we could connect with them on that level. And they're getting married and we're married. So that was another connection point that we were able to make with them that was really beneficial to our business.
I think another great thing about working together as a team is oftentimes, one person is either very creative or you're very business minded and analytical. And what's great about Zach and I is we both have strengths that work together really well. Zach is the free spirit, super creative, but super nerdy, when it comes technical, all this technical
Thanks
camera
for calling
stuff.
Me a nerd, babe. Appreciate that.
A sexy nerd. And that's his strength. You can ask him these crazy questions about cameras or lenses, and he's read all the manuals front to back, and he can spout anything off that you ask him. Me, on the other hand, I just love being creative. I'm not a fan of the technical stuff. I learn what I need to learn to do my job, and that's how that works in shooting. And in business, Zach's the dreamer. He's like, okay, let's do this crazy big thing. And I'm like, awesome. Okay, here are the steps that we actually need to do it and get that working. And so we work together really great as a team because we both have different strengths that complement each other really well. And that's one of the great advantages of working with your spouse or another person.
What about developing a style? And, a photographer has a distinctive style usually, especially if it's developed over time. Do you each have different styles in your photography that complement each other?
Definitely. I think for Jody and I, and speaking to styles, I think styles just naturally develop over time, especially if you just get excited about a certain type of shooting. Maybe it's off-camera lighting or natural light or contrasty images or, whatever it may be. So if you're worried about that, when is my style going to develop? It just develops over time with a lot of practice and shooting thousands and thousands of photos. But for Jody and I sort of have more of an attraction to making a photo look like it was shot somewhere else than where it actually was by using a lot of off-camera lighting. I like sort of the fashiony, slick, stylized stuff. But Jody, on the other hand, has just more of an eye for capturing moments and capturing emotion.
Yeah, I lean more towards just the natural, the raw stuff what's going on. I remember we were doing a photo shoot, and the person here we were shooting, she had a guitar out with her, and Zach had these cool strobes set up, and he was doing this awesome, rockin' light. And I just saw the sun was setting, and we had this beautiful golden light. And that's what I was I was there just to kind of help out and do some stuff here and there. But I'm oh no, I am shooting. And so I grabbed a camera and I started shooting it as well. And it was cool because she got these two completely different looks. One that was really clean and professional and all lit, and then she just got this other just soft, light, airy, natural images. And it was really cool how we can complement each other like that and give our couples and our clients two different looks and styles.
So we've talked about the advantages of working together. Are there any disadvantages in that kind of thing?
None. We always get along and it's perfect. Something that I thought of is that whenever you're meeting new people or you're around people who are your friends, you're always at your best behavior. But with your spouse, you know them like the back of your hand. So it's very easy just to kind of share exactly what's on your mind and not make the most effort to be as kind as you could. So I think some disadvantages in working together is, it's very easy to be a little bit snippy with each other and have less patience for each other than you would for someone else. And so I think that's definitely a disadvantage. I mean, I remember driving out to weddings and we both, we'd look at each other, we'd pray together before the wedding. We're like, okay, we are going to be intentional today about being nice and loving and tender. And we're going to try and avoid any arguments because, it just
and you're like, what's
happens.
more important, me shooting this wedding really well or me getting along with my wife? My wife has to come first before my business.
It's such a high pressure, tense environment. So,
and I would say, it sounds like a disadvantage a little bit because some people I've heard go, I could never work with my spouse. We would just be at each other. And I say, this is a great character building opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that's how you really have to look at trials in your life, I think, is this is an opportunity for me to build character because I don't know one person that I've ever met that hasn't gone through serious trials. And even though some people's trials may seem bigger than others, to that person, they're the biggest thing that they've ever gone through. And I'm trying to look at those things these days as an opportunity to build my character and to become a better person because the two biggest things, like we mentioned sort of before we got on the podcast today, was I had said one of the biggest things that I want to do is I want to impact people's lives with our business, because that leaves a legacy. That leaves something when I'm dying one day on my deathbed, I can look back and go, I didn't just take pretty pictures. I didn't just, capture some great emotions. I helped to enhance people's lives, and that's great. And another thing I want to do is do that with my spouse. And I actually want to do that more than I want to do that for other people. I want to make her life better. And one of the ways I do that is becoming a better person myself. So that's something we both are highly flawed. If you hang out with us for any amount of time, you'll find that out. But we are working every day to work on our character and become better people so that we can enhance the lives of the people around us.
That's incredible. And I think, that's something that we should all aspire to. So let's switch gears and talk about marketing for a second. What would you say are your top 3 marketing channels that work best for you guys?
Oh, that is an awesome question. I'll let my wife start off on that one.
So number 1 is the current brides that we have. They are our number 1 source of referrals. So we like to say that we like to give our brides such a great experience that they can't help but talk about us. So they turn into our walking, talking billboards for us, instead of us having to go out and sell ourselves to potential brides.
Yeah, I think an early on mistake, just to piggyback on that's one place that we focus, and here's one place that can be a mistake to focus, is to think that the only way to get clients to come in the door is to pay for it, is to spend money on it.
Like buy a magazine ad.
Yeah, buy a magazine ad or do a bridal show. And those things aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves, but the best way to market is through what Seth Godin calls permission marketing. It's to connect and build a relationship. He says you want to turn a stranger into a friend into a loyal customer. And that's our goal all the time. Because when you have loyal customers, just like, we talked earlier about Apple, and they're one of the best people on the planet at creating something that's so beautiful and wonderful to use that when someone buys it, they go to their friend and they demonstrate it to them. They go, let me show you why this is so great. And then that person goes from a stranger into a friend and then hopefully into a client. So we have always focused on the exact same thing. How can we take an existing client as soon as we get a client? And that's a whole other story, how we get our first clients. Well, once we have clients, how can we literally blow them away so that they can't help but talk about us? And then we give them a very simple thing, and we say this a lot. As soon as you have a client that loves you and falls in love with you, you've got to do 2 things. You've got to give them a reason to talk, which is, blowing them away with the experience. And then you have to give them a simple way to talk about you, a simple way to share who you are. Once you have those 2 things, that's the first way to really start growing your business. The second one I would say is vendors. You have to have, vendors already have a corner on the market. They're already doing their 20 or 30 or 40 weddings a year.
Especially venues and wedding planners, because oftentimes those are the first 2 vendors that brides will contact before even photography.
Yeah. And if you can, and Jody and I have said this for many, many years, but it doesn't do you any good to get on the list of a vendor, so they happen to refer you with 30 other people. Jody and I always said we want to be on the top of 2 or 3 lists, the very, very, very top. Like, we want the referral to be, you have to book Zach and Jody or you're crazy. And if you don't, here's the other people I recommend. So that was our number 1 goal. And you say, man, that's bold. How are you going to do that? And let me give you a really quick example of how we did that in the very beginning. When we first started out, nobody knew who we were. This is in 2006, 2007. We went online and we found what we believed were the top 30 wedding planners in the Nashville, Tennessee market. And instead of shooting them an email and saying, can you put me on your preferred vendor list, which of course will not work in any way, and people are very uninterested in what they can do for you. They're interested in what you can do for them. So we wrote, Jody did, 30 letters that said, we heard you're one of the top planners. Your business seems phenomenal. We would love to meet you and see how we can, 1, hear more about your business and how we can help you grow your business. And we sent those out in handwritten cards, branded, beautiful little bags, and we put a $5 Starbucks gift card in there that said, here's a $5 Starbucks gift card. We'd love to have a coffee on us and hear more about your business. And from those 30 letters that we sent out, and we had no weddings really booked ever. From those 30, we had 8 or 9 that met with us. And out of those 8 or 9, we had 3 or 4 that said, how have I not heard about you? You guys are phenomenal. And they started referring us from that day on and became our top referrers. And if 3 or 4 planners refer you 4 or 5 weddings a year, all of a sudden you have a wedding business.
We were also at any and every networking meeting. Anytime, wedding vendors were getting together, we were there smiling, asking them questions about them and just befriending them. And that was huge because people were like, because we like blew up on the scene and they're like, where'd you guys come from? We're like, we came from nowhere.
We just started, And then the last one is photographers. You have to have an extremely tight referral network. We learned really, really early on. We were fortunate to meet a couple of photographers from Orange County back in 2007. And they had kind of shared with us, one of them, his name's Becker, and he had shared with us 15 years ago when he started shooting weddings that nobody was helping each other. Everyone that was in the same business, all photographers, were kind of cutthroat. They were all trying to undercut each other or one-up each other. And he said, let's do the opposite. Let's help each other, because he believed a rising tide would raise all ships. So what he did was he got 2 or 3 other photographers, sat them down for dinner and said, hey, I love your work, love what you're doing. I can't shoot every wedding that comes my way. And what I want to do is I want to refer you and this one other photographer only if you will only refer me and this other photographer. And as soon as he did that, he started getting 5, 6, 8, 10 weddings a year coming from these 2 other photographers. So Jody and I did that. We sat down with 2 other photographers that we loved. And instead of just going, hey, if we were double booked, we wouldn't just go, hey, we're double booked and here's a couple of photographers. We would say this instead. We would say, we're really sorry we're double booked, but if we were going to get married again, this is who we would trust to shoot our wedding. We know them, we know their work, and we know their character, and they are phenomenally amazing, and you'd be crazy not to book them. And I can't tell you how many times those photographers would call us up and go, hey, we owe you dinner, you booked us another wedding. And then they would send us weddings, and it was this really amazing synergy that started happening between those referral sources for us.
You want to be careful. You might end up with a bunch of people listening to this, calling you up and saying, how can I get on your list?
That's fine. We already have our list, so it's going to be tough to get on it. You're going to have to do something really phenomenal marketing-wise to catch our attention.
The second one that you were talking about, the referrals from other vendors, this is a great one because I've been talking to wedding photographers recently, some of whom have said, well, how in the world can I get vendors to refer me? Because every time I talk to one, they say, oh, sure, yeah, we'll be happy to refer you. You just pay me, $100 to be on my preferred vendor list.
Run like the plague.
And then they go, well, so how can I get on their list? So you've given us the fantastic, most perfect answer possible for that one. Treat them like royalty and, network in the most genuine and most authentic way that you can.
Absolutely. And remember that little, 3-step scenario, strangers into friends, friends into loyal customers. A wedding planner can be a loyal customer, meaning she just loves you because your number one goal in life is to help her and to make her life better and to see what you can do to help her. And that really comes through time, through FaceTime, through hanging out, through spending time together. And, if you're really wondering how to do that really, really well, read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, and you will really, really learn how to win people over and to love people really well.
Just a side note on that, I think it's really easy to put a target on the vendors who are doing the biggest weddings or they're making the most money.
Good point.
And it's really easy to focus on them, but we felt that we wasted actually a lot of time chasing some vendors who just weren't a good fit for our brides and for the brides we wanted to attract and the brides we wanted to work with. So side note, it's really important to find the other, the planners and the venues who are a really good fit for what you do. And so you're all working together for, to get the right kind of bride instead of like you just have this weird planner who doesn't get you, isn't going to refer you, but you're like spending all this money trying to buy them dinners and all this stuff and it just doesn't work.
Now, you didn't mention social media in your top 3, which is fascinating. So you guys don't like social media, right? You're not on Facebook or Twitter or anything like that.
What's Facebook?
Of course we are.
I think what's really hard about, social media is that you're kind of at the mercy of it. For example, Facebook, everyone's been working so hard to build their Facebook fan pages up. And, now Facebook changes guidelines and you can't even access all your fans. And if you want to access all your fans, you have to pay for it. And it's ridiculous. I think it's really hard to rely on sources that you're kind of at their own mercy, as opposed to you have direct access to your own brides and you know exactly how to get to them and talk to them and market to them.
And we're very heavy in social media. We do a lot of stuff on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Our focus is always our internal network first, the people that we know personally and that we're directly connected to through something that can't be controlled by an outside source like Facebook or Twitter, and then using Facebook or Twitter as a secondary supplement to the brand. And I think that's really the best way to focus on it, because some photographers don't want to build a blog, so they build their entire brand on Facebook. But then, like Jody said, Facebook changes an algorithm, and now you're reaching 10% of the audience you used to. And businesses have done that, now have completely toppled and failed because all of their marketing was coming through those channels. And now they're at the mercy of, Mark Zuckerberg, and you don't want to be at the mercy of him.
For photographers who are starting out, I think paying for some ads on Facebook to build an audience and build the right audience is probably not a bad idea. But, as you say, after that, once you have the audience and once you've got this infrastructure that we've already talked about, is to use social media as a way of nurturing and keeping in touch with the people who matter to you, your clients and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's one of the best descriptions yet that I've heard of how to really use social media in your marketing. So thank you for that. So the customer experience, how important do you feel the overall customer experience is to you guys? I know you mentioned it very early on, so I'm guessing that it is very And are there things that you purposely do to manage that?
Definitely. I mention a lot of books because most of what we've learned in our business has come from business books and then from, other great entrepreneurs that we've had the privilege to meet and hang out with. But there's another great book, Tim Sanders, Love is the Killer App. And in that book, he talks about the change in what people are interested in and what people value and pay money for in the economy, and how it's shifted from quality-based to service-based. And this is over the last 50 years, quality-based, service-based, and now we're in the experiential-based economy, which is going to change again soon. But what's really important to understand about it, us living in an experience-based economy, is that people will pay the most money to feel good about what you did for them, not just about how good it was, like how good the quality was. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be good quality. What I am saying is they expect it. They expect the quality to be phenomenal. They expect your service to be phenomenal, meaning if you say you're going to do something, you do it. But then they expect something more. And what can we offer that's more? Something unexpected, something unique, something that makes them feel really amazing at a certain time that then helps to build value with the client. And the more value you build, the more they're willing to spend.
And people make purchasing decisions based on their emotional connection to a product. So by giving our client a great experience, they become even more emotionally connected to us and our services. And that in turn, helps them to make purchasing decisions.
Yeah, and for us, we think about every single aspect of the client experience, from the first minute that they email us or what they're looking at on the website when they do so, to when we call them and what do we say, when they book us, what do we do afterwards. And I'd say one of the biggest things we do to really build experience from a practical perspective, because we could literally have an entire podcast and just talk about this one topic, but to not soak up the rest of the time, I'll say this. One of the most important things you can do, I think, to create a phenomenal experience is to do what we talked about earlier, which is figure out a way to enhance someone's life and make sure it probably has nothing to do with the service that you're doing for them. So what I mean by that is, if you're in the wedding business and you're shooting weddings, which is what this podcast is about, how can you enhance someone's marriage? Not just their wedding day, not just their pictures, but their marriage. Can you do that in some way, even in a small way? And then you become somebody that really stands out to them, that they value, trust, and love.
A lot of photographers jump into wedding photography, as we talked about at the beginning, because they see it as the one area that has perhaps the most potential for more sales and more money and that kind of thing. What would you say are the top mistakes that newcomers are making?
It's a very good question. I think one of them is to think that it's an artistically driven business. If you want to, now I'm talking about business, right? If you want to make a legitimate money-making business that is not just a hobby or a weekend, warrior job. I think a big mistake is thinking that you're going to take really amazing pictures and strive towards that, and then people will pay you a lot of money for those pictures. And that's just not true. 90% of photographers that are making money in photography have a pretty broad spectrum of the quote-unquote quality of their artistic, work. It really has a lot to do with how good you are at running your business and handling your clients and handling the management and handling the entrepreneurism marketing and strategy and pricing strategy versus how phenomenally amazing your pictures are. And I challenge any photographer to just Google the best wedding photographers pictures in the world and look at images. And then scroll through, and as you do, just glance at the name of the photographer when you see the picture, and do that for about 80 photos. And then try to remember who those photographers were and what website it was and where their picture was and how to hire them. It'll be very, very hard to do because you'll just see a lot of really pretty pictures. And the reality is that you're going to have a phenomenal memory of a photographer if they do something more than that.
When I was doing wedding photography, one of the things that I would ask prospective brides on the telephone when they called me was, how is your search for a photographer going right now?
That's a good question.
They would say, well, we've been looking for a while, and I just have been through so many websites and looking at so many different ones. And I said, well, how did you end up on mine? Oh, well, we Googled it, and I love what you do, and so we thought we'd give you a call. And I said, well, that's fantastic. So how do you feel about the photographs that you've seen on the other photographers' websites? They kind of hesitate, and they say, well, I don't know, really. It's all a bit of a blur.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what you were just saying. It's more about how those photographers make them feel when they have the experience of going through their website and making that connection with them.
Yeah,
very true.
That'll stand out.
Very true. I remember very early on when we first started out, we were thinking about the website and how we were going to market and what, where did the pictures go and what kind of pictures and how much did the pictures matter and all those kind of things. I remember we were doing what we call market research, aka looking at everybody else and seeing what they were doing, trying to steal some of their ideas. And we came across a photographer who at the time was one of the top paid photographers in the country. He was starting at $15,000 to shoot a wedding out in California. And I never forgot when we went to his website, there was no pictures on his website. I probably looked at hundreds of photographers' websites to date. And I never forgot from the first time I saw his site, I never forgot who that photographer was. And the reason is because, one, he didn't have pictures. He had videos. He had videos of him going to the wedding and then shooting the wedding. And then the pictures would kind of pop up on the screen like it was a behind-the-scenes video. But when I saw him and his character and his charisma and all those things, I never forgot who he was instead of who his pictures were. And that was one of the ways that he did a phenomenal job of standing out in a crowded market, of being different, because people remembered that because it was simply just because it was different. Not because he was better, but because he was different.
This brings me to something that I see quite often, and that is when I look at photographers' blogs, for example, and they might have me, take a look at their website and stuff like that. So I'll go take a look at their blog, and I look through a couple of their latest blog posts. What I see is post after post where all they do is they throw in maybe 30 or 40 or 50 photographs into one blog post, one after another, and no text, and nothing that says, really very much about what they did or anything like that. Now, one of the things that I tell people is, look, well, this is my advice anyway.
Which I'm sure is good advice.
Which is probably worth at least 2 cents in any economy. What I say is, look, why don't you focus on showcasing just one image at the very beginning? Talk about that image, make sure that it's one of the best from the wedding, and then maybe introduce 2 or 3 others, smaller ones, throughout the piece, and then end it with a call to action, and you're all good. Because if you have a blog post with 30 images in it, what you're asking people to do is to come to your blog post and go away and try to remember 30 impressions, 30 photographs, instead of just one absolutely outstanding one.
Yeah, very true. And even to take that to the next step is to say, how can you take that one image and tell a story? Because, Seth Godin, again, he wrote a phenomenal book called All Marketers Are Liars. And then that liars is crossed out and he writes in storytellers. Mm-hmm. And the greatest marketers, the people that are the greatest at selling, are the greatest at taking something that you may glance at or may even think is beautiful, but then telling you a story about it that sits in your mind for forever, that you never forget. That's the way Jody and I sold albums for years and years. We would sit down and we noticed clients, if we handed them an album and didn't talk about it, they would open it up, kind of flip through it, point out a pretty, sunset in a picture, a beautiful bride, and look back at us and flip past a few photos while they were looking at us, like our favorite photo of all time. They flip past it and don't really notice. And they would also flip past some of the most amazing stories of all time that we've ever photographed, but you don't know unless I tell you. So what we started doing was we would hold the album and I would tell one, just like like you were saying, let me tell you one story about one picture, about one bride and one groom. And we would tell this phenomenal story about this bride and her father who had passed away 5 years before the wedding. And at the reception, the lights go dim and everybody's going, this is the time when the father-daughter dance is supposed to start, and nobody knows what's going to happen. And what happens is they have a video screen in the background. And 7 years prior, when the father was diagnosed with terminal cancer, he knew he would never dance with his daughter at the wedding. So he bought her a little white wedding dress. They got out the video camera and they videotaped the two of them dancing together. And guess what video started playing right then at the reception? This video comes on. The whole room is filled with emotion because the wedding is in their backyard under the tent. And the bride reaches out her hand to her mother, pulls her mother up, and in tears, they begin to dance together. And my wife captures this beautiful photo of the two of them with the father and the daughter in the background on the video. And we open up the album and I hand it to them and I tell the bride and groom and the parents who are sitting there with them, I say, this is what we do. We are going to tell your story like that. And they never forget that moment because that's so much different than just showing them some picture that they don't necessarily know what's happening in the photo. That's the way that you become a storyteller and sell what you really do because that's life-changing. That impacts people. Her daughter one day is going to crawl up in her lap and look at that picture and she's going to tell her that story.
That is amazing. And it speaks to something that is a big favorite topic of mine is telling the story that is outside the frame. The people can't be there with you when you're creating these images. They have no clue what's outside the frame.
That's good.
They just don't know. What you just described there is such a great way to do that. And it's not manipulation. It's not trickery. It's not trying to tug at people's heartstrings deliberately in an attempt to knock them off the fence to hire you. It's genuine. It's what you guys are. It's what you do.
Yeah,
that's very true. That's very true.
I have one last question for you guys. It's one of my favorites. I don't know if you folks are Doctor Who fans. I'm an avid Doctor Who fan. So if you could steal the Doctor's TARDIS and you could go back in time to when you first started out, what advice would you have for your earlier selves?
Run and don't do it.
For me, and maybe Jody's will be different, but for me, the biggest thing that helped us as we continue to progress, and I wish I had done even sooner, was I heard a quote from a great financial advisor named Dave Ramsey here in Nashville, and he said, where you're going to be in 5 years is dependent on two things: the books you read and the people you meet. And I wish I had focused on that sooner. I wish I had focused on that in my music career, on learning and on meeting people and on turning people into loyal customers and into great friends. So I would say that. I wish if I could go back to my earlier self, I would say, don't be afraid to pick up a book and read it and learn it. And don't be afraid to get out there and to meet people. And if you don't have a personality, you shouldn't be in this business, a great marketer once said. You got to get out there and you got to connect to people. And I wish we had done that even sooner than we did. Jody?
I think it would be just to go back and say, hey, you're worth it. And that may sound weird, but I remember every single time we raised our pricing, it was a battle between Zach and myself. He thought we should charge more, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way. One, there's no way that anyone's going to pay it. And two, we paid $500 for our own wedding. We paid our photographer $500 and then $250 for travel. So we paid $750 for our own photographer. And I was like, how in the world can we ask someone to pay us $2,500 if we didn't even pay our own photographer that much? And it was a battle every time we raised our prices. And I remember as we continually raised them, it was always Zach saying, babe, we're worth this. Look at the work we're doing and look at, everything. And, and when people would pay for it, it was like, yeah, we are worth this. And so I think I would just encourage, ourselves to not doubt what we were worth and just to keep giving our clients a great experience. So, what we are charging, it is worth it. And it is okay to charge people money for what you're doing because you got to take care of your family and you got to take care of your kids.
That's wonderful advice. And I think you don't need another person with you to have that battle about putting your prices up. I used to have it with myself.
Totally.
Hey, I'm going to put my prices up. Hey, you can't do that. No one will pay you. Yes, they will. It's like some terrible sort of multiple personality thing going on there.
Yep.
So I know you guys have a free resource for photographers that they can get a hold of. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we have tons of free resources for photographers. photographers. We literally have years and years worth of free blog posts about how to help photographers grow their businesses, shoot better, light better, all kinds of great systems. But something recent that we put together that we're really excited about, and that literally I think 5,000 or 6,000 photographers have now downloaded, is a free ebook we put together for off-camera lighting. We know that a lot of photographers are like, man, off-camera lighting freaks me out and it seems complicated. But we have created a phenomenal system to show you just how simple it can be. And this is sort of your quick start guide. The off-camera flash, how to start flashing your clients the right way. So it's a really cool ebook. It's really, really great. It shows you kind of the beginning stages of our system and how you can literally download, read the ebook for free. Yeah, you can pick it up just by going to our blog, zachandjody.com/blog, and it's right there at the top header. You can see a little link to our free ebook and check it out.
Well, guys, you both have been absolutely wonderful. You've been fantastic. I have so enjoyed this conversation this afternoon. It's been truly fantastic, and thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your expertise and all of the wonderful information that you've shared with us today. I love your story. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Maybe we can get you back and we'll spend a little bit more time, another time, talking about some of these things in a little bit more depth, perhaps.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Thank you so much. And on behalf of everybody that is listening to this, I just want to thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us, Nigel.